So in this video, we're going to push from Android Studio to GitHub. Now we have actually done a push in the previous video, but that was a wholesale push of the entire project, and we did many things along with push in the one go, in the one step. So that's a scenario that you're probably not going to be doing a lot as a developer. More than likely what you'll be doing is pushing individual files or just a small number of files as you make changes on a regular basis. So let's go through that process now of pretending that we're actually working on this project, making a few changes and just putting through the changes that we've made. So the first thing I'm going to do is open the calculator project that we've got from the previous video. So I've got Android Studio started. I'm just going to click here to open it. And what I'm going to do is leave the version control tab on, like I mentioned, so that we can actually see what's going on. And bearing in mind at the moment, we've got a miscellaneous file there, and we've also got this vcs.xml. I'll be talking about those colors and what they mean shortly. So I'll leave that open in any event. Alright, so first things first, let's make a change to a file. So we can come up here and click on the project pane window. And I suggest you also come up here and click on this little tab. Then you want to go down to App, go down to Source or SRC, go down to Main, go down to Java. There should be this package name, com.timbachaka.calculator. This main activity is the file we want. Now alternatively, I could have double clicked main activity there, or clicked it I should say, not double click, if that file was already sitting there. But in this case I'm going to presume that wasn't open, and we can just double click this file here and that will open it so that we can work on it. And anytime you don't want to use this project pane, you can just click this little project pane there and to close it off, which is good for giving more space for us. Okay. So what we're going to do is go down to the bottom of this method, right down to the very bottom, just before the last right curly brace. I'm going to add a method. Now this is just on the assumption that we're programming this calculator application and we're making an enhancement. I'm not sure whether you noticed, but immediately when I started, this actually came up, and you can see that this main activity is now in blue. And again, I'll be talking shortly about what that means. But let's go ahead in here just before the last right curly brace and type in something like public string return name, parentheses, left and right parentheses, then a curly brace, left one. Then we're just going to type return. Tim was here, and it can be literally anything in those double quotes, and a semicolon on the end. So type it exactly like that, so you should find that there's no errors. So what we've done is we've made a change to that file. That's number one, but in addition, let's now create a new file. So I'm going to open the project pane, and I'm going to leave this, come down right down here to where it's got this package name below Java, com.timbachaka.calculator, and I'm going to click that once with the left click, and then going to right click it, click on new, choose Java class. We're going to type in the words test class as the name and click on OK. Now immediately this prompt comes up on the screen for us. Now that the project's under version control, every time you add a new file to Android Studio, you create a new class or you do something to import or bring in another file into the project, it's going to ask you this question. Now you can set it up to be default here, like we could click on remember and click on yes, in which case it will always add it for us automatically. I like the flexibility of deciding each time, so I'm going to leave that checkbox off, but I'm going to click on yes to say that we do want to add this particular file, this test class.java, to Git version control. I click on yes. Alright, so let's have a look now at what's happening with these different colors that I've talked about. So firstly, you can see here, if we go back to main activity, you go down to the bottom here. Now we have got a warning there that the method's never been used, but that's not actually a Git error as such, that's because we haven't used that in this particular project. But by making this change in this file, it's caused main activity to turn blue. So it's showing blue up here in the tab up here at the top under the file name, but also here in the project pane it's also showing in blue, and also with our version control pane that's open, it's also showing in blue there. So anytime you see a file that's blue, now that we're using Git in Android Studio, that's telling us the file has been modified since the last synchronization with the Git repository. And you can probably guess what green means in the case of test class. That means it's a brand new class that has been added to the repository, so it's in green. And you can see that it's green here also, and it's also green down the bottom here. Now also, now that I've expanded both these little arrows down here, we've got this vcs.xml which is brown, and the color brown signifies that it's not part of the repository. So it hasn't been added. So in other words, it's not getting included in either the local Git repository or on GitHub. Now we could change that if we wanted to. We could click on it, then right click, add to VCS if we wanted to do that, but I won't do that now because it's good to actually see how to or what a file looks like when it's not in the repository. And what I'm going to do, there's actually a pretty decent link that you can go to. I'm going to bring that up on the screen now. I'll paste in the link, paste in the rest of the link. And this is actually quite useful. Now this is for IntelliJ IDEA, but Android Studio is based on IntelliJ. That's the core part of the product is built on this. So you'll find that the same applies. But as you can see here that we get the various statuses of the different colors that are signified within IntelliJ or Android Studio. So check that out to see what some of the other colors are, because you'll see there's some other ones like merging files and merge with conflicts in red, so on and so forth. All right, so let's go back to Android Studio. All right, so now that we're at the stage where we've added a class, I'll just close that browser. So we're at the stage now where we've added a class and we've made a change to a project. Let's now commit these changes we made to both our local repository then to GitHub as well. And the quick way of doing that is to come up here and click on this little up arrow, VCS, which as you can see is the commit changes option. I'm hovering over it. You can see there's a shortcut there, Control K. You can also come up here to the VCS menu, commit changes there as well. If you're on another operating system, the shortcut for your operating system will show there, but on Windows it's Control K. So I'm going to click on this little button now to commit the changes. And we get to see this little dialog box pop up. I'm just going to expand it out a little bit so I can see it a bit better. And this is the author. Now it will default to the author that we've used, that Git has been set up with, but that's really useful in the scenario where you've got lots of users, you're working with a large team, because it helps to identify who made the change both locally and also on GitHub. But we're going to leave that as the default anyway. Now here's where you put your normal commit message. We're going to put, let's say something like modified main activity to add a new method and added the very important test class. Now obviously your comments would normally be a lot better than that, but this is just a test to give us an idea on how it works. Now over here you've got options to reformat code. Both Android Studio and IntelliJ actually enable you to reformat the code, making sure indentation levels are correct, just sort of tidying up the code. So you could click that if you wanted to. That could be a good habit to get into if your company's policy is to reformat the code anytime you check in the code. That can be something that lots of large companies require you to do to make sure that your code's adhering to a certain standard. Optimizing the imports and rearranging the code can also be useful. Optimizing the imports can remove extra imports that are no longer being used in the code. And you can update the copyright message, so on and so forth. Now, perform code analysis is actually an interesting one, and we'll see what happens with that in the next screen actually. Now over here to the left here is the various files that are going to be added when we commit these changes. And in this case there's two files. There's main activity, which is blue, signifying that has been modified, and test class.java in green, it's being added. And obviously you can see down here, new one in green, modified one in blue. Now here we've got an option. As I hover my mouse over, we've got commit, and we've also got commit and push. So the difference there is commit is only committing to the local repository. Commit and push will commit to the local repository and then commit also to the remote repository, in this case to GitHub. So let's actually select the commit and push. And once we've done that, this will come up automatically because we've selected perform code analysis on the right hand side, and it enables us to review the code for warnings and to fix any errors. And again, in a team environment, and just as a general rule, whenever you're adding code to a repository, it makes perfect sense to make sure the code hasn't got any errors in it, and ideally hasn't got any warnings in it. In other words, you're fixing the code to a certain standard before you're updating. And if you're in a scenario perhaps where you've got a lot of developers you're working with, you can imagine that if you upload and add code to a repository that is being shared by other developers and that code's got errors, It means the next time that the other developers get access to the repository and they pull the code down, those errors are going to go into their project. And if you've got, say, 20 or 30 developers in a team, suddenly 20 or 30 developers have got broken code. So that's what this code analysis is for, is to go through and look for problems and to get them solved before the stage of committing them. So keep that in mind. It's a good idea to get into the habit of doing that. So what I'm going to do, though, I'm not going to review anything. I'm just going to click on commit and continue now. And again, if you didn't want that code analysis to pop up, you could take off that checkbox and it wouldn't perform that code analysis each time. But in my case, I'm going to click on commit now, which will commit to the local repository. And for some reason, my Git username isn't defined. I'm not sure what's going on there, but I'll type it in again. Just enter your name and email again. And again, I'm not too sure why, because I'm using the same computer when we're using the command line. And in fact, in previous videos, it worked. But I'm going to enter my details now, even though you won't see the email address. I'll put them exactly as they were initially. And I'll leave that checkbox enabled that shows set properties globally. And I'm going to click on set and commit now. Alright, so you can see there was a brief pause there and it started synchronizing. Well, in fact, it has synchronized now to the local repository. But if we expand this out a little bit, we can see now that it's telling us that it's going to be pushing the commit to the origin master, which is the repository on GitHub. So again, we've got master, means that the push is going to happen from the local master, so that's our repository on this local computer. Then it's got the little right arrow indicating it's going to origin :master, which is the origin master on GitHub. So it's important to realize that the origin :master and master are different repositories, and it's showing us clearly here that it's taking the changes that are in the master repository on our local machine and applying them or pushing them to the origin master, which is on GitHub. So I'm going to click on push now. And it's now connecting to GitHub and pushing those changes. All right, now at this point you can see that this was updated and the files that were due to be added, that's now changed, and we've only got this one unversioned file that was there previously anyway. And we come over to the console log, we can see that a list of things that were changed. In this case, there's our commit message. And we can see over here, we've got, if we just come over and have a bit of a look here, testclass.java you can see there, and also maincalculator.java, which were the two files we actually changed. And we can see that the project on GitHub has been updated, and we can actually click that, and that will open it up on GitHub for us. And we can see now that there's two commits. We can click on that, even though we can see this down here, but I can click on commits anyway, and see that there's this new one that was added only 2 minutes ago, and the previous one was actually added a day ago. And if we go back to our code on GitHub, if we go into one of the files that was modified, let's go into the source folder, into the main folder, into this folder here, and we click on, say, mainactivity.java, and scroll down and have a look. Right down the end, we can see public string return name return Tim was here. That was the file that we actually changed in this video. And just going back, so I'll just go back up here again. Commits. If we actually have a look at the commit message, the commit that's been added, click on that. That will actually show you a summary of what was added in this change, what was the files that were changed or added in this particular commit. Which is pretty handy. So you can see that it's showing us that for the main activity.java, the actual method that was added. Then in the case of testclass.java, it's showing the whole file because the whole file was actually committed. Pretty cool. All right, so that's confirmation that the commit worked both locally and on GitHub. Okay, so let's now move on to the next video. And in that video, we're going to look at cloning from GitHub into Android Studio. So we'll see you in the next video.